It all began with whispers in Ottawa's political corridors, whispers that spoke of a deal unlike any Canada had made before. For years, Canada's Air Force struggled with aging CF-18 Hornets, planes that were no longer fit to counter modern threats. The world expected Canada to follow its traditional allies, the United States, Britain, or even France. But suddenly, rumors spread that Canada was looking toward a different direction. A quiet Scandinavian nation, famous for neutrality and precision engineering. That nation was Sweden. The fighter in question? The Saab Gripen. At first, the idea seemed impossible. Why would Canada, a NATO member closely tied to the US, risk angering Washington by choosing a Swedish jet instead of the American F-35? The US had invested billions in the F-35 program, and countries were under pressure to buy it. But the Gripen offered something different: affordability, adaptability, and technology designed to survive against stronger enemies. The truth, however, was hidden behind closed doors. Official statements claimed the Gripen was under evaluation, but deep inside Canada's Defense Ministry, documents leaked that revealed a shocking truth. The Gripen deal was not just about jets. It was about independence. It was about freeing Canada from decades of dependence on American military hardware. But this independence came at a cost. Intelligence agencies began monitoring communications. Lobbyists poured money into Ottawa to sabotage the Gripen negotiations. High-ranking officials were warned. If Canada chooses Gripen, there will be consequences. In the shadows, powerful forces tried to bury the deal before it could surface. Yet the question remained: why was the Gripen such a threat to NATO's plans? And why was the truth kept hidden from the Canadian people?
The deeper one dug into the story, the stranger it became. The Gripen was not just another fighter jet. It was designed for survival, crafted by a nation that expected to fight outnumbered. Unlike the F-35, which demanded billion-dollar bases and endless maintenance, the Gripen could land on highways, refuel in minutes, and fly again with only a small team of technicians. It was a fighter made for a country that refused to be controlled. Canada's interest in such a jet was dangerous, because it threatened an entire industry built on American dominance. For decades, Canada's defense contracts had been tied to US suppliers, keeping the Canadian Air Force locked into systems designed in Washington. Choosing the Gripen would break those chains. Documents leaked to journalists painted an even darker picture. Meetings between Canadian officials and Swedish defense representatives were closely monitored by US intelligence. Memos warned of severe diplomatic repercussions if Canada dared to finalize the deal. Behind the scenes, defense contractors spent millions lobbying to discredit the Gripen. Articles suddenly appeared in major newspapers, calling the Swedish jet unproven, risky, and unsuitable for Canada's climate. But insiders knew this was misinformation, carefully crafted to kill the deal. And yet, despite the pressure, the Gripen deal moved forward in silence. Reports claimed that a secret agreement was already drafted, one that would give Canada unprecedented local control over its fleet. Unlike the F-35, which came with restrictions on software and weapons, the Gripen promised full sovereignty. Canada would be able to modify, upgrade, and arm its jets without asking permission from Washington. It was this sovereignty that terrified NATO. And it was this sovereignty that no one wanted the world to know.
By now, the whispers had turned into shadows of conspiracy. Why was Canada suddenly so bold? The answer lay in an incident buried deep within classified archives. In a training exercise, Canadian pilots flying F-18s had been forced to wait for U.S. approval to test certain systems. That delay, though minor in peace, was a chilling reminder of what would happen in war. Canada realized that with the F-35, history would repeat itself. Every decision, every upgrade, every weapon would need U.S. approval. In other words, Canada would never truly control its own Air Force. The Gripen promised something entirely different. Sweden offered not only jets, but also transfer of technology and joint production. Canadian engineers would work side by side with Saab, building a version of Gripen tailored for Canadian needs. For the first time in decades, Canada would have true independence in the skies. But independence is dangerous. Soon, anonymous threats began appearing. High-ranking politicians who supported the deal suddenly faced scandals. News reports accused them of corruption, of mismanagement, of conflicts of interest. One by one, they began to fall silent. It was as if someone was erasing all support for the Gripen, piece by piece. Still, the deal refused to die. Secret negotiations carried on in hidden rooms, guarded from both media and foreign spies. But something darker was at play. According to insiders, certain files had vanished from government servers. Files that contained details of the Gripen's radar, its electronic warfare systems, and its integration with Canadian defense networks. Who stole them? No one could answer. But suspicions grew that it wasn't just foreign interference. There were forces inside Canada, working to sabotage the deal from within. The Gripen deal was no longer just a defense contract. It was a battlefield of its own. As months turned into years, the story became more sinister. Officially, Canada claimed it was still reviewing options. Unofficially, the Gripen deal was alive, but hidden under layers of secrecy. A small circle of officials fought to keep the project breathing, but the pressure from outside was relentless. One NATO official reportedly warned, "If Canada chooses Gripen, it risks isolation." But what did isolation mean? Would Canada be cut off from joint missions? Would intelligence sharing be restricted? The warning was vague, but the threat was clear. The Gripen deal was more than a contract. It was an act of rebellion. What few Canadians knew was that Sweden had already prepared for this. Saab quietly offered Canada a version of Gripen capable of Arctic operations, something the F-35 struggled with. They promised quick delivery, low maintenance costs, and even the ability to train Canadian pilots in Sweden at record speed. For a country whose northern skies were threatened daily by Russian bombers, the Gripen was the perfect answer. But perfection is never allowed to survive untouched. Suddenly, leaks began painting the Gripen as too small, too weak, and
outdated. Defense forums exploded with misinformation, much of it traced back to shell accounts linked to major defense contractors. Billions were at stake, and every day the Gripen survived was another day of lost profit for its enemies. Yet, despite the smear campaigns, Canada continued testing. Canadian pilots who secretly flew the Gripen returned with astonishing reports. The jet's agility outclassed expectations. Its radar could detect threats the F-18S never saw, and its electronic warfare suite could jam systems that even NATO didn't want discussed publicly. One pilot even whispered, "If the truth came out, the Gripen would win tomorrow." And that was exactly the truth no one wanted revealed.
In the end, the Gripen deal became a ghost story within Canada's defense circles. Officially, nothing was signed. Officially, the competition remained open. But unofficially, a hidden struggle continued. Files disappeared, politicians changed their tone, and journalists investigating the deal reported mysterious break-ins and missing data. One investigative reporter uncovered shocking evidence. The Gripen deal had been deliberately delayed to give the F-35 an advantage. Meetings were canceled without explanation, evaluations were extended far beyond schedule, and billions in contracts were suddenly redirected to American suppliers. The truth was not that the Gripen failed. It was that the Gripen was never allowed to win. And yet, the legend of the Gripen in Canada refuses to die. Whispers claim that secret agreements still exist, that Canadian engineers have studied the Gripen's systems in hidden labs, and that one day, Canada may quietly reintroduce the jet when the world least expects it. Some even say that Saab left Canada with hidden blueprints, a silent promise that the dream of independence is not dead. The truth of the Gripen deal remains locked away, buried under politics, money, and secrecy. But one fact is undeniable. Canada came closer than ever to breaking free from the shadow of American control. And that is why the Gripen deal remains one of the most mysterious, most dangerous, and most silenced stories in Canada's military history. The question now is simple. Will the truth ever be revealed, or will it remain buried forever in the archives no one is allowed to open?